everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel where we do painting tutorials. For this week, I have a rare, easy, beginner-friendly seascape. So I start by coloring the top inch of my watercolor paper with some light ultramarine and dark phthalo green from my Faber Castell watercolor pencil set. Feel free to use any turquoisey kind of green and blue you may have in yours. And I quickly activate this with my watercolor brush, going left and right, right and left. It does not have to be perfectly smooth. If some of the brush strokes are visible, that is perfectly fine. I'm going for a more dramatic vibe rather than keeping it perfectly realistic. And since I did not apply any water to the rest of the page that is blank, I don't need to wait for it to air dry. I just straight up start working on the sea, and for the part that's right on the horizon, I use mostly my phthalo green. For that part, it's pretty crucial to use horizontal pencil strokes and small horizontal pencil strokes for like the ripples in the water and the small waves. If drawing is not your thing, there is going to be a traceable of all of the shadows, highlights, all of the tiny waves available at my Patreon page, Sunshine Arts, along with a full-time painting tutorial of this specific video and digital downloads of my paintings. If any of that interests you, links are going to be down in the description. If not, let's keep on with this tutorial. I go with my ultramarine right over the phthalo green because I want these colors to mix. I don't want the sea to be straight green. I want it to be a very nice turquoise tone. So I lightly glaze with the blue over. I have not yet activated any of this. I just want to work on blending my two colors as much as I can in the dry phase before I move on to activating them. And for the sand area that's gonna be on the bottom left corner, I use raw umber for my base tone. I surround the waves of the water clashing onto the beach with my raw umber, and then I roughly color in the entire sand part. You do not need to follow any specific order or brush strokes because sand has texture, so yeah, we're not aiming at making this smooth or anything of the sorts. Then for the part of sand that is closest towards the sea, I'm using walnut brown because wet sand is typically lighter than dry sand, so I'm gonna quickly color that part right there a bit darker than the rest. And I'm using warm gray number 5 from this set, whatever that means. It's basically a warm gray. I didn't want to use straight black because I don't have black going on throughout any of my paintings so far, and it would look weird if I added it over the sea. However, gray, that's pretty neutral, so I am going to apply these three tones, these three colors I just used for the sand, over the sea that is closest towards the beach because the water is more shallow and you can see parts of the sand beneath peeking through, so that's why I'm using the raw umber, walnut brown, and some of the gray to paint over the water. However, notice how I'm leaving about half a centimeter empty right there where the wave clashes onto the beach. That is because I want to preserve the white of the paper to give that foamy look. You know how the top of the wave has foam and it splashes and whatnot. Yeah, that's what I'm going for. It's just easier to show you this rather than try and explain it. Apologies for that. And right in the middle of my painting, a bit of diagonal line, I want to have a larger wave that's like clashing onto itself. I outline the bottom of that with my gray using bits of my brown, and I'm going to darken it up with the green and the blue. Basically all of the colors I have used so far throughout this painting. I want to unite them all to get a very deep, rich shadow there. And also on the wave itself, I did some curved lines to give the idea of the wave rising up, basically some opposite C shapes. You're gonna see it better once I activate this, and I get my watercolor brush with barely any water on it. I'm tapping its tip onto a napkin to make sure it's pretty much on the dry side because I don't want too much water on this. It's better to use a dry brush when you're painting bodies of water. That's just my personal opinion because it tends to skip bits of the paper that way and you get a very easy and natural water sparkles slash shimmery effect. It just makes life easier is what I'm trying to say. Again, I try to keep that horizontal brush stroke instead of going in from the right side of the paper all the way towards the left side. Just very small dash-like shapes. And I don't necessarily follow any order, like going from light to dark or similar. Actually, what I find best is I start from the top left corner of my paintings and move towards the bottom right because I'm right-handed and that way I do not smudge wet paint. If you're a lefty, then you might find the opposite to be more comfortable to you, aka starting from the top right corner and working your way towards the bottom left. Then for that large wave, again, I follow those opposite C shapes, and it's perfectly fine if a bit of pigment goes over that white foam of the sea. And lastly, for the sand, I'm using a tapping motion to create a large amount of texture because it's sand. Sand has a crazy ton of texture. And I bring some of those colors onto the bottom of the wave that is splashing onto the shore. I did not wait for this to dry because I want to add some more details, and I take my gray pencil and I add some lines onto that wave I have going on in the center of my painting. Just some slightly curved lines is more than enough, and then go over it with some green and blue to keep that watery turquoisey color I have throughout my whole painting, and I tap over it with my brush. You can also use small dash motions, follow the opposite C, or use a tapping. It doesn't really matter because at this point I want to get off those small splashes of water popping off the top of the wave, so some texture is fine. Lastly, I thought I'd do some very small lines and dashes with my darkest brown with the walnut brown up in the sea closer towards the horizon, and do some small lines over the large wave. I go over it with my light ultramarine, and since my initial sketch was done using a normal graphite pencil, I pick up any of the black graphite you can see peeking through those highlights, peeking through the waves with a normal eraser, and proceed to slowly peel off the tape. I like to give a very special thank you to my Patreon supporters for the month of May, and thank you all for watching. If you found any value in this video, let me know down in the comments, and we'll see each other in the next one. Bye bye.